Is the modern format in a good place, or are we being lied to? Pro Tour Edge of Eternities is just around the corner, and with modern being the primary format, a lot of eyes are on what a lot of people would think to be a diverse metagame. But the numbers don't necessarily match up to the gameplay. A lot of people have anecdotal references of modern being too drag racy, too fast. But again, the numbers show a pretty healthy spread of a lot of viable winning strategies. There's a lot of cards that are even in standard that are affecting modern in a big way, bringing new life into old and new archetypes. With that in mind, in today's video, I wanted to take a breakdown of what's going on in modern right now and how we should be feeling about it based on those numbers versus player sentiment of gameplay. And then at the end of the video, I want to go over a short aside on mill. I haven't done that in a while, and being that mill guy, I think I should. So let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Before you hop into the video, how do you feel about modern right now? Competitive 60 card Magic has been a standard focus for a very long time. So now Pro Tour Edge of Eternities comes at us with modern this weekend with 3 days of it, and there's just going to be a lot of great fun in a format that has a lot of relative diversity. But as I mentioned in the intro, is this actually diversity, or is there some fundamental problems in regards to the gameplay? Is modern actually fair, or is it broken? I mean, when it comes to the numbers itself, it does lead to understanding a very interactive metagame that does have a lot of quote unquote combo to it. In many ways, there might actually be some analogy to this when it comes to even the legacy format. And part of that is because modern is an old format. It's not eternal by true definition, but it's one with such a large card pool that it's only inevitable that the broken things are going to kind of peer through, especially one that's been affected by the Modern Horizons formats, been Modern Horizons.soup. It's crazy to see that in this breakdown, Boros Energy is actually not at the top of the metagame, but it's not because of the symptom of what Boros Energy does to the format. Boros Energy has been at the top of the modern metagame for a very long time. For those of you that aren't maybe as plugged into modern, it's one that is largely defined by Modern Horizons 3. I would, anecdotally say here that 90% of the deck is literally just Modern Horizons 3 cards, or at least the most highly impactful ones. Heck, some of the lands have even been reprinted there. So heck, I'll make that argument even more. The threat package, the primary combinations, and the ways you go about your nonsense are defined by cards in Modern Horizons 3 designed to work with each other. Because of that, it's been a defining force in what can beat Boros Energy and is just Boros Energy largely in part. And with that, the deck does primarily struggle against the combo decks. The way it wants to go about its plan with its mid-range value, it does want to set up a level of engines. And while it's looking to set up, if it misses the ability to set up that engine, it can be put too far behind in the idea of going about sideboarding and bringing about sideboard cards. But if it then goes about that engine without those sideboard cards, then it just loses out to combo. So there are give and takes, and that's a very simple kind of explanation of what's going on with Boros Energy. But with that, you get the other combo decks, or decks that are highly interactive and mid-range based that have combo finishes. And again, you see analogies like this or analogous play patterns in the legacy metagame, where if you're not playing combo, if you're playing control, you need some type of combo win condition. I think Painter in Legacy is a great example of this, a red-based mid-range strategy with an instant mill win condition in the Painter plus Grindstone. Here in Esper, Goryo's, and Modern, you have the quote-unquote not instant win, but near instant win of something like Goryo's Vengeance into an Atraxa. Atraxa then comes in as a Vigilance lifelinker that's going to be able to get in over top of any creatures, deal a significant amount of damage with haste, put your life total above, by a pretty good margin, while also then drawing the owner of the Atraxa somewhere in the range of 2 to 5 cards sometimes, right? A big amount of cards to then continue on to further interact, further counter, further just stop what the opponent's doing. And with that, you have the regular package being Esper of the Dimir interaction, the white base cards that also help forward the plan. It's really just Psychic Frogs at the end of the day. Past that, you have Tameshi Belcher. This is a MDFC no land Belcher strategy that doesn't take advantage of anything like Balustrade Spy, because let's be honest here, Balustrade Spy is only not good in the modern format because Dread Return is not a modern legal Magic card. The minute it is, Dread Return becomes good again. The Dread Return deck, the Balustrade Spy deck in Modern is like, just requires so many more hoops to jump through without Dread Return into Thassa's Oracle. So now the MDFC deck of choice is again Tameshi Belcher. Being mono blue, you have access to all the interaction, all the MDFCs alongside the Belcher package. You are also playing the kind of work extra hard 3-step Black Lotuses of the format, and alongside something like Tameshi Reality Architect, a card that allows you to recur some of these cards. You really get to go far with said combo. On top of that, you have the Boros Energy deck, the Eldrazi Tron deck, which is purely an Eldrazi mid-range strategy that has been hyper-powered, again, by Modern Horizons 3, with the support of the colorless cards from there, and some more recent additions as well. It is Eldrazi Tron with the Tron package of the Tron lands, playing that mid-range plan, whereas something like the Eldrazi Ramp deck is that Eldrazi Zoo kind of go wide, play a bunch of these impactful creatures and go at you with like Eldrazi Temples and Soul Lands. But Eldrazi Tron looks to play like a slightly more controlling plan. Like you are playing Eldrazi, but you're playing Karn the Great Creators, and you're playing the new Ugin, Eye of the Storm, and all that stuff. Like you're playing a control-ish package, whereas Eldrazi Ramp just wants to go out into big things, play a giant Emrakul, or play other Eldrazi threats and just swing out at you. On top of that, you have Izzet Affinity, which is the newest addition, and actually, I think a real highlight of Pro Tour Edge of Eternities. One thing I will shout out is Affinity has made a big comeback thanks to one specific Edge of Eternities card that you can warp in for one and just go about playing a bunch of, like creating a massive board into something like a Blastoise, aka a Kappa Cannoneer. Izzet Affinity just is doing a lot of broken things early. You're going to see some consistent patterns of Eldrazi Tron and Eldrazi Ramp, just the big mana decks creating a big mana delta earlier on in the game. It's a concept that many Commander players are understanding of, where generally speaking, the person with more lands or more ways to cast things is going to be the person to win. If you are double spelling earliest, you are likely gaining more advantage. And that is what the Eldrazi Ramp, the Amulet Titan, and the Eldrazi Tron deck likes to do. The Esper Goryo's deck has an instant I win button, being able to cheat out an Atraxa. The Tameshi Belcher deck is a combo deck. You're always trying to break parity on what it means to do something fair in combo decks. Boros Energy is naturally doing something unfair, being at the top of the metagame. It is the best creature-based mid-range strategy, aggro strategy out there. It just does everything it does to the best of its ability than any other deck can. It's just, if that deck is weak to something, then it's not going to be able to come up, it's not going to be able to fix that without going back on some of its plan. Again, it does what it does best in class. That doesn't mean it comes without downsides. Again, Affinity is doing that thing of cheating on free mana by playing with the Affinity for Artifacts mechanic. Just cheating things out for free, casting things at times where they really shouldn't be cast, all that type of stuff. Esper Blink looks to be the highly interactive mid-range strategy of the format, playing a creature interaction package, being able to blink out your stuff, but also blink their own stuff to just gain insane amounts of value with Quantum Riddler out of Edge of Eternities. Again, another Edge of Eternities card. Having Modern be the format for Pro Tour Edge of Eternities is such a fantastic idea here. Being able to showcase like actually a lot of cards out of Edge of Eternities, and a lot more recent cards, which is a crazy time in Modern right now. The power level of some of the cards being printed. So outside of that, lots of diversity happening at the top of the Modern metagame. You have combo, you have big mana, you have creature-based mid-range, you even have like combo mid-range. Like you don't have like the pure combo versus the interactive like kind of mid-range combo that plays like the Psychic Frog and all that stuff. You do have actually a high level of variety, but the pattern at which we're seeing might actually lead to something completely different. And I recommend you read the rest of this article, going over a lot of great breakdowns as to how these decks work in terms of their mid-range plans with, like, you know, Atraxa, Psychic Frog, Faithful Mending to fill graveyards, Goryo's Vengeance to return some things. Like, again, like every deck gets its own breakdown, and I'd highly recommend you kind of take a look at some of even these cards, the most played cards from recent sets. The set releases since Modern Horizons 3 have left a considerable mark on the format, which is true. Quantum Riddler, Thundertrap Trainer, which has been absolutely an all-star, even not even just in combo, but in control decks as well. Just because of the advent of free counter spells, you now have a counter spell that you can cast for free by sacrificing a creature. So Thunder Trap Trainer is fantastic for that, being able to cast it, find that counter spell. Maybe you already have it in hand, so you cast this and try and find your combo piece, and you have the counter spell in hand. It's a great piece to just, you know, search up a card while being left around for protection. Into the Flood Mod just ends up being one of the best interaction spells made in recent memory as an uncommon. It is such a fantastic catch-all. Using it in Pioneer has been great. Voice of Victory being that additional piece that the Boros energy decks have been able to take advantage of, but also like a lot of white-based kind of creature strategies are using Voice of Victory as well. Pinnacle Emissary is the artifact that the affinity decks have been taking advantage of. So whenever you cast an artifact spell, create a 1/1 colorless drone artifact creature token with flying. They can only block creatures flying, but it doesn't matter, you're getting offensive. So once you play a land into a Pinnacle Emissary, you can start to imagine Mox Opal trigger, create a 1/1. You know, Mishra's Bauble trigger, create a 1/1. Then you tap your Mox Opal, you know, you cast or you cast Frogmite, trigger, create another 1/1. Then you tap your Mox Opal for blue, you tap everything down, cast a Kappa Cannoneer, because you can tap the drones to cast a Kappa Cannoneer, trigger the Pinnacle Emissary, create another 1/1. That 1/1 enters, triggers the Pinnacle Emissary, making it now a 6/6. Like, Pinnacle Emissary just leads to the absolutely insane, broken, wild starts. The deck does insane things. Ugin Eye of the Storms, Clarion Conqueror. Shout out to this card being actually like a legitimate vintage staple as well. The initiative deck, like, I actually did not even fully clock in that this card was like made recently. Just activated abilities of artifacts, creatures, and planeswalkers can't be activated. Seems pretty damn good. Not gonna lie, seems pretty damn good. Overlord of the Baelmark, Unable to Scream, Ice Till Explorer, Sire of 7 Deaths out of the Eldrazi deck being 7 and higher, so important. So many cards that have made big waves in recent decks. The modern metagame is not only diverse, but taking advantage of a lot of recent cards. Standard sets are actually affecting the modern format. Now, that could be sampling size. You have to remember that on average, we have more sets per year. So of course, we're gonna get more affecting, like more powerful cards affecting the modern format. That's something to acknowledge there as well. You can also somewhat acknowledge the potential increase in the power of these cards through design, power creep, aka. And that's also something to consider as well. We are not in the fire design era. Some of these cards aren't even necessarily in, you know, Universes Beyond cards. Something like the Aether Drift set or the or Tarkir Dragonstorm, Bloomburrow, Edge of Eternities. Again, all these sets aren't, you know, they're not Universe Beyond sets. We have in-universe sets, but I think part of that is because of, you know, more powerful design, more push standard, but also the idea that we now have a larger sampling rate to go off of, more sets per year. So of course we're gonna have more effect of standard cards, where if this was more spread out, we would see a longer list of cards, or sorry, a shorter list of cards, a longer time period of effect to get the same number of statistics. But with that, we see a diversity in the modern format, but I've been alluding to the fact that a lot of the play patterns in this format are very fast. They can feel like things happen and decisions aren't really made. Modern feels very swingy, right? In the idea that, again, Eldrazi can get 4 mana on turn 2 relatively consistently, and they're just playing powerful things. Domain Zoo, just playing these insane threats while not being punished by a 5-color mana base. Goryo's Vengeance, a highly interactive package in Quantum Riddlers and Psychic Frogs with an instant I win button. Belcher being a pure combo deck up at the top because of the fact that Boros Energy is up there. Affinity with Pinnacle Emissary, just a whole new revolution, being able to get out Kappa Cannoneers on turn 1. Aiming the Titan being consistently the best deck in the modern format that no one knows how to play for metagame after metagame after metagame. Is it prowess? Uses Corey Steelcutter. Ban card in standard. All-Star in all formats is legal in. It's used in Pioneer, it's used in Modern here, as you see. It single-handedly revived the Izzet archetype in Legacy. Izzet Delver doesn't even play Delver anymore. Plays Corey Steelcutter, by the way. Grixis Reanimator, another Psychic Frog deck that has a quote-unquote instant I win button by reanimating Archon of Cruelty, a threat that honestly is just insanely powerful and is actually seeing more play than other reanimation targets in all formats. Like, Archon of Cruelty actually is a legitimately powerful threat, even in the legacy format. Ruby Storm, I believe there's only one registered Ruby Storm player from what I was seeing, which is kind of funny, just not getting the wins that it wants. And especially, I think Brian Cook actually released a recent video about halfway through, but I think in the beginning, he even mentioned that the reason he made the Red Belcher video was he was kind of recording a bunch of Storm videos for Modern, and they just weren't doing well. And he mentioned Ruby Storm just not doing very well. So I'm surprised Ruby Storm is being played, but I mean, it's there. Esper midrange just being the blink deck, Eldrazi ramp just being around because, I mean, yeah, it has a really good matchup in a Boros Energy and other matchups as well. You have a whole bunch of other stuff. The modern metagame has a lot of play to it. But with that, you're doing a bunch of broken things, even though the top of the modern metagame actually shows a lot of diversity. Again, just I want to highlight that through the challenges that have been going around, we now have a daily modern challenge every single day, if not 2 on some days. You know, look at this top 8 from just this one yesterday on the 24th. Goryo's Vengeance, Eldrazi Tron, Belcher, Affinity, Esper Midrange, Boros Energy, Affinity, and Belcher. So we have a relatively diverse top 8. 2 decks have 2 copies in it. The rest of it is pretty different. If you go to the next one, Ramp, Affinity, Domain Zoo, Boros Energy, Belcher, Eldrazi Tron, Blue Red. 7 deck diversity in the top 8. Shout out to this one, Ziriak winning with Demir Mill. Just saying. Just shout out to my Mill players. Just saying. We're going to be talking about Mill at the end of the video. Domain Zoo, Affinity, Belcher, Azorius Control, Blue Red, and Red Green. Again, a 7 deck top 8. Just a lot of diversity in general from these top 8s of these challenges. There's going to be ones that are more kind of homogenous than others, but at the front face of the modern metagame, it's really diverse. It is really diverse. I do want to also shout out the fact that Affinity is really expensive because we don't have a plan for reprinting Mox Opal, and that is completely Wizards of the Coast fault. They can reprint Mox Opal. They just don't want to indirectly acknowledge the secondary market, but there's nothing stopping you from printing Mox Opal at rare into standard sets and designing the standard environment around not having cheap interactive artifacts that enable Mox Opal. I'm just saying. Wizards of the Coast can actually print Mox Opal into standard. They don't want to. They don't want to make these cards accessible. They want you to pay more money. Okay, this is just the reality of it. I'm just using that to point it out. But the fact that Eldrazi Tron is like a $400 deck is like actually pretty sick in terms of accessibility because it's cheaper than some standard decks. Just pointing that out. Regardless, the modern metagame I actually posted as being relatively diverse and not, mad at Modern's meta right now. The amount of viable decks winning is, pretty high. But then Skrull actually responds with something that I thought was pretty interesting. So that's only if your metric is the number of viable decks. For some people, one of the metrics is gameplay, which is horrendous to some, like myself. So I asked, what is frustrating to you and why? I'm genuinely interested. He says, I find the gameplay very nut dry and deprived of agency, which I personally value. I get double agent tombed on turn 2, or as in like Soul Land, so Eldrazi Temple, or the new Ugin's Labyrinth. By the way, everyone that hears me say Ugin's Labyrinth in comments down below saying this is actually how you presented, the joke's going over your head, okay? Or Amulet destroys me on turn 2 to 3, or I see a turn 2 frog with a million free counters, the spell pierces, spell snares. The frog decks probably aren't playing spell snare, but spell pierces, force negations, counterspell itself. And Affinity vomits out 11 game objects and a Kappa Cannier. Just like I said, absolutely. The fact that the majority, if not all of the modern Affinity deck is illegal on Timeless and Arena, I highly recommend y'all check that deck out. That was the easiest run to Mythic with that Affinity deck ever. You're just bullying people. Like, it's insane what that deck does. The only people who praise modern diversity are standard players who long for playing decks against different decks. However, a longtime modern player takes it and assesses it through a different lens. Now, I will say, kind of clicking into this, Barsec here, I've been conflicted about Modern's current state, so I want to hear your voice about it, play points, whatever. However, a longtime Modern player assess it through a different lens. As much, Modern is a nut draw fiesta with insanely swingy games. And see, the thing is that I think what people don't understand is that this is what Modern has been for a very long time. I don't think Skura is necessarily wrong, But the closest analogy I have to what modern is not only that it is a drag race, it is people just getting faster and faster and faster and just trying to hit a finish line. You are never trying to slow down in modern necessarily. You're always trying to speed up. The decks trying to slow you down are just not successful whatsoever because the other person is just going faster and faster and faster while you're trying to pull them back. They will always outrace you. And again, that is what modern has been for a very long time. Modern has been this way since the advent of Modern Horizons as a set. I have talked about this ad nauseum, pun intended, and I have talked alongside this with other creators as well. Other creators have talked about this themselves. Modern Horizons has fundamentally changed Magic the Gathering in general, whether it be Commander, Eternal formats, or Modern. Heck, even the Pauper format, which again, Eternal format, but sometimes people don't consider it as such. It has changed the game and what it means to be powerful in this card game. And so with the modern format specifically, having it be this nut drawy drag race has been won because of that. But the difference is that when it is compared to something like Vintage, which I think is actually a pretty valuable comparison. Vintage is a format where you get to play with the most powerful cards in Magic's history. Some are banned, but for the large majority of the time, you are going to be able to play with the most powerful cards. And Modern and Vintage play in similar fashions in the sense that both formats are all about not incremental value, but large leaps in value. It is about making your opponent have it. And if you are able to resolve the broken thing, your opponent will not be able to stop you. Whereas in the Vintage format, you have the status quo being Strip Mines, Wasteland, Force of Will. Like a lot of free interaction exists in that format. Cards that don't necessarily have downsides in comparison to what you're stopping. That is the status quo of Vintage because it is Eternal Magic. That is the status quo of arguably Legacy as well. But Legacy is a highly interactive format dominated by broken things right now that are even more broken than the free spells. That is a highly interactive format where incremental value does actually win out and there are meaningful interaction points. The problem is the space and the time to which you can interact is significantly shrunk down to what the average Legacy player would appreciate. But again, Vintage to Modern. The problem in Modern, in comparison, as I was saying earlier, is the fact that Modern doesn't have these interactive spells. It has Force of Negation. It has, Force of Vigor. It has the free spells. The problem is that those don't stop everything. So the cards that are naturally just going to be the powerful cards that are cheaper, you're thinking of the, 1 mana Izzet artifact that just gets to, poop out a bunch of things, the Ragavans of the world, the 1-drops that do everything, Quantum Riddler, which is just a free 5-drop really when you're thinking about how it gets valued out with, the Felias and the Ephemerates of the world. Like cards like that get to run for free because the interaction that exists in the format does not line up. Force of Negation is free only on your opponent's turn, and you have to pitch a blue card and only hits non-creature spells. Force of Vigor, similarly so, only hits artifacts and enchantments. That's not really the most relevant thing in the world, but some decks will be playing it in the side. In terms of removal, Fatal Push has its limitations. Yes, it can kill Psychic Frogs pretty well, but it doesn't hit a lot of the Eldrazi, and even so, you have to have a permanent leave. Path to Exile is just not a good card in the format right now because you do not want to give your opponent a land. That is such a bad thing to do in the modern format right now. That is such a huge tempo loss. Of course, if there are white-based combo decks, then Path to Exile would be kind of irrelevant, and there's a world where in the mill decks, you could play Path to Exile because your opponent searches for Archive Drop, blah, blah, blah. But even in the mill comparison, it just highlights how mill decks struggle because yes, we can bully the combo players with Surgical Extraction, but the combo players also have a mid-range plan, which is also the ultimate downside of mill. Mill decks ultimately lose really bad to mid-range decks. It struggles against aggro decks, but has anti-aggro tools. It really takes advantage of combo decks, combo decks, and actually does really well against control decks because it can 1-for-1 them better. But when it comes to the mid-range decks, the value of what they're putting 1-for-1 is so much more powerful than what you're doing. Thoughtseize Inquisition at a start, the threats they're throwing across, and the fact that these mid-range decks, the Psychic Frog decks, now have a combo plan You just can't do anything. They're a quantity deck with a high level of quality amongst individual cards across their deck. And it's not a quality deck where you're just looking for 1 or 2 cards in the deck, like a true combo deck. Like against Belcher, I can Surgical Belcher and largely win the game. Against something like the Goryo's Vengeance deck, I take out Goryo's Vengeance. Sure, their Atraxas are now dead, but now Psychic Frog is just running at my face. And then they have Counter Spell and Spell Pierce all to protect everything, right? Like, what's happening in Modern is that the individual resolve cards are so hard to answer. And when they go to resolve them, your opportunities to interact with them and the decisions that you could reasonably make are so small, because in the Vintage format, you have free Moxes, you have free spells, and you have cards that individually do powerful things, right? Like you can reasonably draw 3 cards in the Vintage format, but at a relatively easy rate, to be able to find your answers against your opponent doing something absolutely broken on turn 0 or on turn 1. You can't do that in Modern. You know, once the ley line of the guild pack resolves, that is probably not going anywhere against the Zoo deck. You are probably not answering that. And then if you are on the draw, you are not fast enough to get Counterspell up likely in any way, shape, or form to then stop the turn 2 2-mana 4/4 that gives every creature every relevant keyword against the Zoo deck. It is so play draw dependent that honestly, it is a pretty relevant criticism of exactly my tweet. And I got to give Skura the line for that. Yes, Modern is diverse in paper in terms of the statistics, but the gameplay actually correctly is very frustrating. Now, of course, I want to acknowledge my bias of the fact that Mill is not good into this metagame. There are plenty of decks that Mill actually bullies on completely. The Amulet deck, the Belcher deck, a little bit of Goryo's Vengeance, but probably likely not. The Esper mid-range deck is honestly not actually that bad of a matchup. The Riddler probably makes it a lot worse. Ruby Storm as well is a decent matchup. But a lot of the other matchups actually aren't that great, especially Eldrazi just stopping Tasha's Hideous Laughter. And then we are naturally feeding the Emrakul, the Promised End, which just comes down and absolutely wrecks you. Having protection from instants is so good. And so a lot of the metagame is just like absolutely 20% for Mill or like 80% for Mill. And that's what it feels like in a lot of matchups. It's a good analogy for that. A lot of games just ends up being very play draw. You have to do a lot of broken things to even get anywhere. And the broken thing that Mill is doing is free spells. It's playing Surgical Extraction. It's playing Archive Traps. A lot of times you just win games because you can triple Archive Trap your opponent. And that's good enough. A lot of times you just Surgical Extraction the combo player, and that's good enough. That's how you steal the game, by being on the draw. Right? A lot of times these things do just happen. You can cycle a Fractured Sanity, you get the Belcher in there, you get the Tron land in there, and you slow them down fast enough, or you stop their game plan fast enough to the point where it doesn't even matter. That is where Modern is at right now. And I'm not sure if that's actually the Modern that a lot of people want, but it's what Modern is right now. And I think a lot of people can try and argue that that's not what Modern is or what it hasn't been, but I would again argue you're wrong. It's been the design philosophy of Modern Horizons for a very long time to create a powerful and skewed Modern. The amount of cards that we've seen be banned because of synergies in Modern Horizons sets, whether they be directly banned from Modern Horizons sets and or cards that are supported because of Modern Horizons sets, them being banned. The format has seen a lot of churn. It is not the format for a very long time where you can buy into a deck and be good with it for a while. I mean, heck, Tron has had its time where it's unplayable, and now it's good again because of Modern Horizons. It is largely just an Eldrazi deck. You are still playing Karn the Great Creator, but you are not playing Karn Liberated anymore. 7-mana Karn is not a relevant Magic card. Remember when that card used to be like $50 or even more? That is not a relevant Magic card anymore. And so these decks see a lot of churn. They see a lot of up and down, and we can only hope that the next Modern Horizons 4 set is not going to completely neuter the deck that you're trying to play. I'm open for Mill support. I would love for Mill to be good again, but if Mill is good again, it is such a frustrating game plan for the vast majority of players that it would probably get banned because the vast majority of y'all actually suck at the game. If you actually think Mill is a bad deck to exist in the game of Magic, you probably suck at the game altogether, and I don't trust your opinions in Magic whatsoever. So with that in mind, because of people like you that suck at that game and hate Mill, I have to accept that Mill is gonna have to be bad for a very long time. And the format specialists like Zeriok and the vast majority of people in the Mill Discord are gonna have to succeed in a small scale, because if we succeed in a large scale, the deck's just gonna get banned because none of y'all can deal with it, right? Everyone's just gonna bring in the shuffle effects. But with that, I'm already starting to rant about Modern Mill in this crazy metagame. And that's where I see Saffron Olive tweet, you know, Pro Tour Edge of Eternities meta is up, sadly no Lantern, but I might just be a Mill fan for the weekend. And so in today's video, I want to take over this last section here and just talk about Mill, right? As I mentioned in the intro, I'm that Mill guy. I've been playing Mill for a very long time. Whether I've been successful at playing Mill is a whole different discussion, but I played a ton of Mill. Good or bad, it doesn't matter. I played a ton of Mill. Okay, what that means is that I can understand when Mill is good in this metagame. It's not. Surprise, I've said it already. And even though Mill is succeeding, there are, as we see, placements of Mill at first, top 8, there are people following with Mill, there are people succeeding with Mill at a tournament level. And that also means that there are ways that Mill is succeeding. Right? You know, triple crab openers are absolutely insane. They're backbreaking against certain decks. They just can't keep up. They can have removal for one, but having multiple, I mean, 4 crab openers are absolutely insane. Like, I don't think any deck can actually legitimately deal with that. Like, Ruin Crab having an 0-3 butt is actually really relevant. Jace the Perfected Mind, just having additional copies of Visions of Beyond, but I largely believe that Visions of Beyond is not even a good Magic card right now, and having it as a 1-of is powerful, but Preordain providing you selection is probably just the better way to go in that draw slot. You're playing Fatal Push, and Surgical Extraction is the broken thing that you're doing, being able to stop the combo decks, which is why you're also playing Extirpate in the side. Fractured Sanity is there, and I also don't think Tasha's Hideous Laughter is any good whatsoever, but somehow Tasha's Hideous Laughter is winning, so I just have to concede to that fact. I don't know how. I don't know how Tasha's Hideous Laughter is succeeding in this metagame. Against all the Eldrazi decks, against all these decks, like, you are having to sideboard out so much good Mill that, like, against certain matchups, you just have to take them all out. But again, it's succeeding somehow, so I have to concede to it. On top of that, you have the Disruption in the Field of Ruin decks, or in the Field of Ruin land Disruption, I should say, where you do actually have a lot of 3-color mana bases. You have a lot of decks that, you know, you can mill out an incidental island or a plains, and all of a sudden you hit the white source, you hit the blue source. They aren't able to reproduce that again without a fetch land, which is actually really powerful, setting them back. Not to mention Tameshi Belcher is the second best deck in the format. Post board, they can bring in a basic land, but main board, a Field of Ruin is actually insanely powerful, just being able to set them back by a whole turn. On top of that, the sideboard is where this deck really sings right now, and I believe Consign to Memory is probably the most impactful card in this deck, bar none. Right now, the modern metagame doesn't require you to have all-out graveyard removal. It doesn't require the Leyline of the Voids or the Soul Guide Lanterns. And you kind of see this in the Legacy format a little bit as well. I personally am playing Leyline of the Void against, you know, for the Oops All Spells matchup and the the Dimir, not just mid-range, but also the Dimir Reanimator matchup in Legacy, just because it's like relatively a hard permanent for them to deal with, so they have to swap to like a mid-range plan, and that can happen with like Barrogoyfs and stuff like that. It can work, right? Like it's a thing, right? Like you can bounce it and then start swinging in. You have other threats. Like there are things that the Dimir players are playing in Legacy that get around Leyline of the Void. But when it comes to Modern, right now, not only is the combo hate in Extirpate and Surgical Extraction really powerful, specifically for the Mill deck because you're able to feed the graveyard, but Consign to Memory just does it all. Because Soul Guide Lantern used to be relevant in a world where Endurance and all-out graveyard decks were really powerful. The all-out graveyard decks are no longer a thing. Faithless Looting is unbanned in the format, but Dredge isn't playable, so you don't need it. Heck, even against Dredge, like if you stop Creeping Chill, like how do they win? You know what I mean? Like if you get rid of the Wonder, if you get rid of the Haste Enabler, or whatever it is, like if you just get rid of the stuff like that, like how do they win? You know, they're too slow. Consign to Memory is powerful because the primary angle that is really good that a lot of decks generally have against Mill, especially at a competitive level, you're going to see, you know, 3 Dimir Mill players are registered for Pro Tour Edge of Eternities. They are going to be faced with a ton of Shuffle Titans. Consign to Memory counters the Shuffle trigger. It counters the colorless decks, such as the Eldrazi decks, which are largely bad matchups for Mill. It counters the Storm trigger against the 1 Ruby Storm player. It counters Cascade. Like, there are so many powerful things that Consign to Memory counters that because it counters the Shuffle Titan and sub graveyard triggers, it largely acts as graveyard removal as well. So Consign to Memory just ends up being the most defining, if not like second most defining card, if not the most defining card in the Modern Mill deck right now. And that's absolutely insane because, again, not only is it a Modern Horizons 3 card, but it's a blue card, it's an interactive spell, and it's a sideboard staple, probably 3 to 4 of in every blue deck across the whole format. It goes to show you the power of the card. And so we are having to do something that all other decks are doing with a worse main board plan. We're not playing Psychic Frog. We're not playing Orcish Bowmasters. Those aren't angles that are relevant to us. So if the other decks are if the other blue decks are doing, just doing that better, and they play the Shuffle Titan, it's just going to be a worse time for us in general. And that's the frustrating part. We go down on Visions of Beyond because, again, in a blank canvas, in a vacuum, you don't want to be playing that in an Orcish Bowmasters format. And there are a fair amount of Orcish Bowmasters actually running around. And so you're having to not only deal with all of that, but the fact that, honestly, you just don't have a good matchup against Boros Energy. It's a mid-range deck. It's a deck that has a lot of value. It's a deck that assembles a couple of engines. And the problem is that it's a quantity deck. It has a lot of quality across a lot of individual cards. It has a lot of things that it can go about. Like if it's not going Ocelot Pride alongside the broken Soul Sisters variant, you also have the Ajani with the Goblin Bombardments, and you have all these plans that Surgical Extraction doesn't stop, and Crypt Incursion just isn't good enough at, because it can create a wide board. And so you're having to play cards like Meathook Massacre and Profane Memento when cards enter graveyards, and Toxic Deluge for those board wipes. And so the modern mill deck in general is able to do broken things, but it's doing them alongside a sideboard package that the blue decks have, but just with the primary game plan that's a lot worse than the blue decks. We're just a worse Psychic Frog deck because we don't play Psychic Frog. And that's where we're going to struggle in this metagame. We are able to take advantage of things, but it's just not our time. And as I mentioned, as long as Mill is in a bad place, we're not going to get banned out, because there are bad players that can deal with it. And we do have ways to take advantage of things, but it's just never going to be at a wide scale. Now, of course, the 3 Mill players may get lucky in their matchups and may be able to succeed. I mean, heck, Zeriok right now, has been able to, place first place, which is absolutely insane in challenges. And we've seen other people place first place in top 32, top 16, top 8 in these challenges. Of course, with the higher sample size, a challenge every day, if not 2 on some days, you're going to eventually see Mill succeed. That is the statistics by numbers. Just there aren't a lot of Mill players trying to play at a top level. And one thing I want to do is let me know in the comment section down below. I'm, trying to work out some of that time with my wife to play these tournaments, but I do actually want to play more challenges. So let me know if you want to see that. I actually am trying to play more challenges in Pioneer because I really am a fan of the Lumra combo deck. So if you want to see me play more modern challenges, maybe I just scrub out and I only, top 32 or top 64, or just worse. I just do bad. But maybe I do good. Maybe I get up there, and maybe people take me more legitimately, whatever it is. Let me know if you all want to see that, because right now I think Mill is in a good place relative to everything else. It doesn't need to be at the top. It just struggles a little too much. But I do think there's a good reason to play Mill if you want to make meta calls. You can play to the meta calls of just playing against combo, really bulk up on your surgicals and extirpates, and be ready for Boros Energy and play your 4 consigns and just say, screw it, we ball. Fuck it, we ball. But you're also going to struggle against some other random matchups if you're not up there. Try and stay at the top tables, win early, and you should be able to succeed, I guess. Let me know if you want to see more Mill gameplay in the challenges. I would love to bring that to you, but I'm only going to know if you let me know in the comment section down below. Let me know how you're feeling about Mill. Let me know how you're feeling about Modern. The metagame is at face value really diverse, and I think at the league level, at the local level, a lot of people are happy with it. At the competitive level, it's been the same for a very long time, and I think to try and acknowledge that in the sense that it's not something of what it is, or it's been made a recent change because of Modern Horizons 3, is being purposefully ignorant. Modern has been up and down for a very long time, and a lot of times it's because people have their skewed view of their deck being really good. I have recently come to better accept Modern. I think Modern is actually really diverse. I actually still, with all this said, think Modern is in a good place. If you are okay with this gameplay pattern, Modern is in a good place. If you don't want this gameplay pattern, go play Legacy post-November, or just go play Pauper. You are not going to be finding highly interactive, super heavy 50 decision-making type of stuff in Modern. Modern is a drag race format and has been for a very long time. It is not that highly interactive, super crazy, again, as I mentioned, you can make 50 decision points at one place. If you want that, you have to go play Eternal Magic. You have to go play Force of Wills. You have to go play Vintage. You have to go play Legacy. You have to go play Pauper. Those are highly interactive decision-made formats where your individual decisions at all points of drawing a card, what card to play in what order, and how to sideboard all matter. Modern is very play draw. You have to do the broken thing. And I'm okay with that.